Thank you so much, Srini, for taking out time. It's a delight to host you at Pepper. Uh, I know it is a very busy schedule for you, but you making time means a lot to us. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Anirudh.
Totally, totally. Would love to start with a quick introduction about you and your journey, and then we'll straight away deep dive into the topic for the session. So, CVL Srinivas is one of the most foremost people in the media marketing advertising space in India. Country manager for WPP India, which is one of the world's largest agency networks. I think it's been about 25 years of experience with Srini having led leadership roles across companies like Maxis, Bennett Coleman, Starcom, eventually GroupM, and now full scale to WPP. And I think the best thing and the most interesting thing about this is Srini and I share the same alma mater, which is BITS Pilani, and we were just discussing offline that how I think engineers do everything in their lives, but eventually don't end up doing engineering and go from all different segments, and that's very evident at BITS. So thank you, Srini. Thank you for taking out time. Really appreciate this.
No, pleasure. And anything for a Bitsian on a Saturday evening.
Awesome, great. So I think moving on to the session, right? I think digital transformations on the rise, and when you especially look at how brands are evolving, how agencies are evolving, overall the entire martech space, right? We've seen a lot of interesting trends go on, and content has played a very key role in not just becoming one of the key currency, but also becoming one of the key levers on which brands starting to heavily invest. So Shini, how have you seen the evolution of content, especially say 25 years back when you were just starting out to today? What are some key parallels you can draw from the how the industry shaped up around content?
Yeah, thanks, Anirudh. So, I mean, if I look back over the last 20 odd years, I'll probably put the whole thing into kind of three phases of evolution. Earlier, if we go back to the mid 90s, content in our field of marketing communications was equal to advertising, and that's about it. And even there, things were pretty standard in terms of the way they were defined or the way they were kind of developed, right? You had standard TV ads, print ads, and so on, and all of that was content. I think towards the later part of that period, and maybe in the early 2000s, I think there was a little bit more innovation, and you started hearing of the term branded content, where brands started kind of creating forms of content which was not advertising, but in just creating environments in which they could get their message across. And I think around that time we also saw I think a little bit more data and content kind of coming a little bit closer together, and so on. And I think in the last few years, what we're seeing is thanks to the advent of digital media and all the various platforms that we have, the plethora of data that's available. I think we've now moved to kind of data-led content creation. We're in a world where some brands and clients need content on tap, literally. So that's where we've kind of moved to. And the biggest change, of course, is today. Like I think one of your sessions was every company is a content company. Every brand is a publisher, and if you stretch that logic, every person is a creator. Every one of us creates content. So yeah. So the whole definition of content is changed. It's a very omnibus term today. Advertising is only one very small part of it. Yes, a very important part of it, but a small part of it. And then you have all other forms, be it whether it's influencer, whether it's voice, whether it's any of your social media pieces of content, and all of that. So yeah, it's just become more omnibus, and it's got quite integrated with data and tech. I think a lot more integration will happen as we go along, but I think we are at that stage right now.
No, very interesting. And I was reading how, and you were discussing this of how Marguerite said that India is a standout market for WPP also. And I think how India is literally treading the digital wave. And especially after Geo, the internet and a lot of audiences coming online and brand scaling, right? What role have you seen, like what kind of trends have you seen that have transpired to India becoming one of the foremost in digital? And I see this going even to the top three in the next few years. So what trends have you seen that have played this out?
Yeah, I think again, if you look at the trends, I think I would bucket them into three or four different kinds of trends. I think one is, you can say, I mean, broadly speaking, consumer-led trends. The fact that the consumer is ever evolving, with the millennials, and then with the post-millennial era, a lot more consumption of digital media. Tastes have changed, behaviors have changed, lifestyles have changed, and so on. And obviously, by implication, the demands for content, etc., have changed. So there's a consumer-led set of changes. Then there is the infrastructure led changes. The fact that we have, amongst the lowest data prices in the world, the fact that we have, a billion plus handsets, the fact that we have now almost a majority of them becoming smartphones, and the fact that we had Geo launching and kind of disrupting the market and sending prices even lower, and the fact that the government, to their credit, in the last 5 6 years, laid a lot of emphasis on digital infrastructure and bringing digital into governance, and so on. And that, in a way, is the other reason why India is an exciting market, because of the infrastructure changes. The third, I would say, is I think India is one of those unique markets where not only do you have the global tech players here, and in fact, I think almost all of them consider India to be one of their R&D hubs. They do a lot of product development here as well, apart from, of course, India being a big revenue market for them. So a lot of innovation happens to the global tech majors in India. But you also have, obviously, a very, very thriving ecosystem of startups. And Anirudh, you yourself and your company are a shining example of that. So unlike some of the other, big countries, which are either, totally isolated and have their own local ecosystem, or those who kind of depend only on the big tech players, we actually have a combination of both, and actually both are thriving, right? And in fact, they work quite well together. So I think
Yes.
that's the other very interesting and unique aspect. And finally, uh, outside of all of this, I think we're just blessed to be born in a country which is so diverse, so heterogeneous, multiple languages, multiple cultures, and all the more reason why you need the best minds to make things work here. And yeah, so all the success we've had as an industry is, I think, largely due to that as well. So I think these are the various reasons, I would say, India is right up there. We are ahead of the curve, and in the I when I remember passed out of college, and we were chatting about this before the show started. Those were the days when the few tech companies that were coming up were running more of back offices, and we were known more as a low cost hub. But today, it's not that. I think people look at India as an innovation hub. I think that's the shift that we've made, and I think that makes it very exciting.
That makes a lot of sense. And very interestingly, creativity and tech have grown to be hand on hand, right? They're together now, right? Earlier, I think creativity was looked at from a very different lens. I think tech's played a very key role to augment that. And how has your space seen this sudden technological innovation come to the fore, and how has that allowed you to adapt your internal organization, your teams, to make themselves and upskill themselves more around these trends?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great observation, and it's very true that in the 90s, the joke in the ad industry, at least in the agencies I
Yeah.
worked for, was that if you had long hair and if you had a ponytail, then you're a creative guy. And if you have short or no hair or a receding forehead, hairline, then you're not a creative guy, probably a media guy. And the two were like very different personalities, people, and one really didn't mess with the other. But cut to where we are today, I think, I mean, there's no way a creative person can work in isolation of data and technology. I think data and technology, while of course creativity and the power of the idea is still supreme, in building the right solution. I think data and technology are very useful aid, for a creative person. And I think the smart creative folks are the ones who kind of been able to kind of embrace creativity, embrace technology and data in their creative process. As far as what we have done, and I guess I'm sure what others are doing as well, is we are trying to within our own organizations build better linkages between the creative teams and the data and tech teams, and also obviously the as generations of creators and creative folks kind of change. At some level, it also happens naturally, right? You have people who are more in tune with the platforms that are being used by the consumers today, getting into this field, being able to kind of relate to them and therefore develop those kind of creatives or content. So that on the one hand is happening naturally. And the other thing which we can do as an organization is to build the right linkages between the creative and the tech communities. So in WPP, for example, we have created something called the Tech Innovation Group, which is a group of representatives from across all our operating companies, including the creative agencies, who together form like the tech council for us. And this group is doing some very interesting work in areas where technology meets creative, or data and technology meet creative, and taking it back to their clients, and resulting in obviously better solutions and so on. So that's one way of managing it, which is to build communities and develop the linkages so that one kind of feeds off the other.
Makes sense. And like we were discussing, right, very recently, I think earlier there was this one common term which is advertising, right? And that's what customers used to come to, and they didn't know much post that. It was then a lot inside the agency. Versus now, I think content marketing in itself has just become so large. It's a $400 billion industry we're sitting talking about globally, where there's designated owners for content. Customers themselves understand the importance of content end to end, right? So very curious to know, how are you seeing the role of content as a header becoming more and more visible from, say, a customer spend lens, or from a customer's importance of this as a key medium in how they think about marketing?
Yeah, I mean, today it's all about give me the right solution to help me build a better brand or a business, or whatever. And that solution could come in the form of a traditional advertising campaign. It can come in the form of a content, or a series of interesting pieces of content woven together with some data insights, etc. So I think all of it kind of fits in as far as it being a solution is concerned. So in a way, I think it's, whether you call it content, whether you call it advertising, I think it all boils down to are we working with the right kind of insights? Because your data by itself has limited use, right? Are we actually fetching out the right kind of insights and coming up with ideas that can grow a business or a brand? And once you have a powerful idea or a big idea, earlier one would talk of the big idea in the context of advertising, right? I mean, what is a big idea in a campaign, or that particular moment, or whatever it is? Today, I think you have to look at a big idea for a business. So what is a big idea that can unlock value if you're a brand for your consumers? So what exactly is it? I mean, it could be something to do with the product itself. It could be something to do with the way it's positioned, or whatever else. So I think today, in fact, one of the expectations that has changed over the years is agencies moving from just delivering advertising and media solutions to helping clients solve their business problems. So once you have a big idea to solve a business problem, or let's say a few ideas which kind of lead to one big solution, content could then be one of those I would say subsets to kind of drive the overall solution. So that's the thing. So in fact, the implication of that also means that if you're a content creator, I think it will also be useful to see the bigger picture if you can, and try and see what role are you playing overall in the fortunes of the brand. Yes, you're creating a piece of content, you're developing a particular campaign or whatever else, but what is it doing ultimately to drive business for the brand? and what are the linkages you need to build with the other marketing levers. And again, there's a lot of change there, right? Earlier, now there's so much of e-com happening. There's so much of social commerce. There'll be live, and there's live video commerce as well. So, how do you kind of build linkages across all of that and ensure that whatever you're doing is part of a bigger, I would say, solve for the client. So yeah, so I think that's what is happening right now.
No, I think very interesting, and I really like this notion of when you talk about creators, right? I think for the longest time, the advertising and the brand relationship was always very two-sided led, right? Where uh, essentially is a two-sided relationship, but over time we've seen this huge emerging class of creators coming and becoming brands by themselves, right? Especially after Instagram, ByteDance, all these different platforms. I don't think it would be unwise to say that creators are brands in themselves today. And how have you seen agencies navigating now a three-sided relationship where essentially creators are becoming brands of their own, they're becoming more powerful, and how do you adapt to be able to fit very deeply into the equation and add value to all sides?
Yeah, so Anirudh, I think the point that I missed out earlier was, we're also living in an age of collaboration, right? I don't think any one party or any one set can ultimately drive the whole solution. So, firstly, I think we welcome the fact that there is this whole democratization of content creation, and the fact that we have, and thanks to platforms like yours, we've got thousands or millions, I could say, probably of content creators today, and that to high quality ones, right? So yeah, I think as an organization, as an agency, I think if we build the right kind of linkages, I think it will be very exciting for us to combine, let's say, the relationship and outreach we have with clients with some of the infrastructure that we have, along with the, let's say, nimbleness and the variety, the expertise, let's say, in languages and maybe so many niche segments that your cohort can bring to the table. I think the combination can be mind blowing. So yeah, so that's from our perspective, and from the perspective of a content creator or an individual, and like you rightly said, many of them are brands. I think yes, I mean they obviously can do very well by themselves, but I think if they are part of or they plug into an ecosystem which gives them access to firstly maybe even a global reach, or the right kind of technology, the right kind of data, and so on and so forth. I think their output also can get much richer, and also obviously the inspiration, etc., that they can get. So I think there's a great scope for a symbiotic relationship because content is such that the more brains you have, the better the output will be at the end of the day. You only have to be able to kind of build the right kind of linkages. It's not a area where typically there are one or two people who kind of dominate, right? So yeah,
Yes.
so I think that's the opportunity, and I'm sure we're all doing that, right? We're working closely together with companies such as yours, and that's really helped both sides, I guess.
No, I think very agreed. I think you know the best part about this is like adaptation, right? I think with trends, right? Even large companies like yours, right? And I'm very amazed by the agility by which how transformations happening in internal organizations as well as even for smaller companies like ours who are trying to scale now. I think creativity and tech have to go hand in hand, and that brings me to an interesting question, Srini, that I think for the longest time, agencies have operated from set mindset, and after COVID, obviously that's transformed very heavily. What do you see in the next 5 years? Would agencies look like? Do you think they'll be similar to the current models, or do you think there's going to be a very different transformation part that all of us still have yet to see?
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, it's very evident that agencies can't operate with models of the past. I think that model is already dead. It's not that it's still alive. I think it's already gone. the traditional, let's say, communications or the creative and media revenue model is no longer, making too much of business sense, right? The growth is all happening in areas like, experience, commerce, technology, the kind of work that you guys are doing in terms of getting, content creators together and generating content and production at scale, etc. So these are the areas really of the future. So I think agencies will have to transform their model in such a way that they leverage their strengths, on let's say whether it's client relationships, whether it's the kind of infrastructure, data, technology, etc. that they've invested in, but at the same time are able to kind of either through partnerships or through let's say acquisitions or internal transformation get into these areas which are the fast growth areas, and in doing so actually move up the value chain, because it's not that each of these are silos. At the end of the day, a client expects the business solution. So I think the leap that one needs to take is to be able to kind of stitch all of this together and provide a solution to the client. So it's almost like you're a solution architect, and you have all of this at your disposal. You have different boards or teams or specialists, and how does someone orchestrate a solution by bringing all of these different specialities together, and of course leveraging your traditional strengths as well. So I think that's the journey agencies are on. I guess different agencies are at different levels, but I think moving up the value chain, driving solutions for clients, focusing on areas like commerce and technology consulting and experience and all of that, and making it part of your core service is really the future.
Very interesting. And Srini, I'm often amazed at the thought of, when I say large scale like companies like WPP looking at, moving faster than trends to adapt, right? How do you go about thinking the entire upskilling segment, right? I heard a lot about WPP Campus and these incubation programs that you run, universities and so on, right? How do you go about doing that for, your entire employees? In fact, even the emerging marketers who are going to come into the field, and even customers for that matter. How do you also keep up with the trend and make sure it's a similar picture all across?
Yeah, so we're trying to do it at various levels. I think, like you mentioned, we've moved into campuses in India in both Mumbai and now recently Gurgaon. We just opened our Gurgaon campus last week. So we have all WPP agencies under one roof, and that makes doing these kind of things a lot easier. We have, both the chief people officer and chief culture officer for WPP India, and so we have a good way of orchestrating a company-wide L&D program. At the same time, we don't want to slow things down by just making everything kind of led by WPP. Our operating companies are, of course, doing a lot of this themselves. So what we actually provide is supplementary kind of programs which actually make sense across different domains, or anything which we believe we can do better running at scale. We kind of do it. So there's lots of action going on that front, both at the operating company level as well as the WPP level in market. In addition to this, we work very, very closely with our partners, our tech partners, data partners, content partners. And with all of our partners, in fact, L&D or learning and development is one very important area of collaboration. In fact, for both sides, it's not just we getting trained by them, but they also getting insights from us in terms of the way we look at a client's business. And so through that as well, we're able to kind of create a layer of learning for our folks. And yes, we have incubation hubs in both our campuses, in both Gurgaon as well as Mumbai, where we invite young companies to actually come and work out of our campus. And where so we are literally bringing in all the exciting stuff happening in the Indian ecosystem right into our spaces. So yeah, so it's through a combination of all of that that we're driving this agenda.
Very interesting. And curious to also understand, right? WPP's the messaging is the mission is being a creative transformation company, right? Where I think emphasis is that creativity will be at the heart of the business while it's backed by data and technology, right? Could you maybe talk to me more about how you go about reinforcing this
Yeah.
at scale, and how did this come across?
Yeah, so when Mark Reed took over as the global CEO of WPP 3 years ago, I mean, he was very clear that at the end of the day, while we talk a lot about technology, we talk a lot about data, we talk a lot about transformation and doing all of that, what finally moves the needle for our clients' business is creativity, and that we believe should always be our most important agenda to drive, or our USP of sorts. So, which is why we creatively added the word creative to transformation, and with a single-minded focus, we're driving it all across WPP. So let me just give you a few examples of that. So we have Rob Reilly, who's joined us as a global chief creative officer. Recently, and he works very, very closely with Mark Reed, our global CEO. And Rob's job is not just to look at the creative product of WPP, but to try and see how can we bring the creative transformation agenda to life. So in everything that we do. So that's the agenda being set at a global level. The emphasis that we give to creativity across both global, local, across all levels is very, very high. Whether it's in terms of the kind of recognition the creative folks get, through all the internal schemes and awards and all of that. The fact that we're trying to create a culture where people are able to kind of take risks and not penalized if they fail. So really pushing the boundary when it comes to the creative idea. And I guess it's working because you probably know we got this year at Cannes the Creative Holding Company of the Year. So which is the biggest prize. There can't be a bigger prize for creativity. It also somewhere busts the myth that large companies can't be creative. So if the largest advertising holding group is also the most creative, I think somewhere that myth has got busted, right? So that's the other way in which we do it. And yes, lately again looking at data, technology, AI, how could we use all of these to kind of augment creativity and the creative talent that we have is another focus area. So a lot of programs are being run even in India, and I spoke about the TIG to you earlier. In fact, there is a nice overlap between the TIG and the creative community as well. So through all of these initiatives, we're trying to bring creative transformation to life. And just to point out, we'd like to call ourselves the creative transformation company.
That's a very, very, very wonderful thought behind this. And I think to summarize and to move towards a conclusion for this conversation, every company is a content company, and the content marketing landscape is just transforming dynamically, right? And what are your thoughts about how does content continue to play a key role where every company becomes a content media arm of its own? And what are organizations like ours that can do to transform this very vehemently?
Yeah, so firstly, I mean, there is obviously no better time than now to be in many businesses, but especially if you talk of the content business, for the reasons that we spoke about right at the start. I think it's a great opportunity. It's also a time where probably this industry has the maximum amount of competition, right? Because theoretically speaking, every individual on this planet is a content creator of sorts. I don't think there's any other industry which can claim to have so many people in it. So there is also that challenge. So how do you kind of, as a person, as a creator, how can you cut through the clutter and stand out? Just like your ideas or your content, you always try to make them kind of stand out. So what I would say is, I mean, you can talk data, you can talk technology, and all of that. But I think the most important thing for a content creator or a content company is to build trust with your consumers, build trust with your audience, your clients and your partners. I think there is a lot of trust deficit in the world, and I think the trust deficit is only increasing because of all kinds of extraneous forces we've been subjected to, right? And honestly, I don't think technology and digital platforms are helping either. So I think someone needs to kind of plug that gap and start building a lot more trust. So if you ask me in terms of order of priority, if I'm a content creator, I think the first principle I would lay down is, how do I build myself as a trustworthy brand and to generate kind of trustworthy content and lock in with my audiences and clients for the long term. I think that will help you manage the competition and manage everything else. I think all the other stuff we spoke about can probably come in after that, whether it's leveraging data and insights, whether it's obviously keeping abreast with the technology and all of that. But if there's one thing I'd want to focus on, it would be trust.
Makes sense. Awesome, Srini. I think this is wonderful. I think very interesting insights, and I agree on a lot of fronts. I think there's a lot to do, and I think the next 10 years is going to be. I think so. The next 10 years is going to be the decade for creators and for creativity to come at the fore, augmented via technology or without. But I think the time is now. Awesome. It's been wonderful having you here with us, Srini. Thank you so much for your time. We've had a wonderful session and very interesting thoughts from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Anirudh. Thanks for having me. Bye and all the best.
Totally.